So the difference between what we intend and how it is received is always going to be vast, and our imaginal capacities for what we can create and what we envisage, what we ensonage if it's music, these are all things that can have like a radically different experience when we actually produce something and have it out in the world and have it land on the other side with an audience or no one, if it is the case of the online space where it can often feel like one has laboured over something and shared it into a void and there's just like no feedback or reverberation there. There's a beautiful quote from T.S. Eliot, The Hollow Men: "Between the idea and the reality falls the shadow." And as humans, we have these incredibly vivid, florid even, like beautiful capacities of thinking and picturing or even, hearing how something is going to turn out when it comes to a creative project, or maybe it's even a relationship or something like that. And there are often quite similar characteristics with people who have high creative sort of imaginings and are engaged in fabricating, wonderful worlds in their writing or their art, and also have this like thing that they do that with relationships as well, and they kind of like create imaginary characters out of the people in their lives. And I've certainly had that in terms of fantasy bonding and things like that. Check out my book Overlove for more on that. But yeah, it can be a real barrier, and then it can mean that when we actually create something and release it into the world, even before releasing it into the world, when we can create something and it can just be like, oh, okay, so I intended this and it turned out like this, and either I need to get significantly greater means or support to have it end up the way I intended it, or I just need to accept that there was lots of happy accidents and I have been supported by the resources and skills that I'm equipped with to iterate it in this particular form, and that's okay, make peace with that. And for a lot of us, we know that things are maybe beyond our means, and we realise when we have an idea and then we try to paint it, or we try to make that film or write that song and produce it, that we are lacking the capacity to actually do it justice. And there's a beautiful David Lynch quote about this, which is when you have ideas or intentions creatively, to write them all down. And when asked, how do you choose which ideas to pursue, he had two answers. The first was the ones you love most, and the second answer was choose the ideas that you can do justice to with the means that you have. And I think that's really beautiful, because we do need to be able to distinguish and discern like what is achievable and what we can execute within our means as creative people. And when one is resourceful, like there's a lot more that's possible than people would think. I invest virtually no money or resources into my work. It's just like a lot of the time labour of love. I always produce my own music. I've obviously invested in various forms of technology over the years, but it's not important to me at all. I will just use the tools that I have, whatever they are, and that resourcefulness is really beneficial. But yeah, different people have different approaches, I suppose. But the other thing and the other caveat here is that when one produces something and has an intention of how it will be received, often, obviously, every person that does receive the work that it does land with on the other side has their own baggage and their own filter and their own framing and their whole universe of their language and their experience that is completely different. So we can never ensure or be assured of a particular reception from an audience or a person, because ultimately they're an individual. So it's not something we have any or much control over as a creator. If we are of a more prescriptive, didactic nature, we might tell people what it's about, we might write text to say what it's about, we might try and shove that down people's throats. And I've had so many students over the years who do this, you know, and you will get into like a critique situation. And the intention of a critique, the purpose of a critique is to have people share their work and to not commentate what it's about, and let them experience the audience or the kind of other peers in the environment just saying, you know, on pure association what they're getting from the work. And there are problems with this whole structure anyway, because it's kind of like when we create something artistically and then expect people to respond with language or intellectual ways, that can be very limiting and not helpful. And I think this is why a lot of people maybe don't respond well to those scenarios, because what they're sharing isn't maybe on that level or in that zone. And there's another video about this in terms of the intellectual predominance in creative education. But yeah, really how things are received is really in the eye of the beholder, and we cannot control that too much as we might want to pepper or kind of influence the way that something lands with others. So if you do want to talk more or have advice around any creative projects and the intentions around that, I cannot guarantee any particular reception from any particular individuals, groups, audiences, critics and such. However, the clarification of that intention and the selection of the ideas that one loves or one has the resources to do justice to, that's something I can help with. Please comment below if you have any particular experiences with like that shadow of the ideal in your head that you envisaged or ensonaged when you started producing work, and the outcome, and whether that has been jarring or positive. Please comment below. I would love to hear all about it, and see you for another video now on these links that are everywhere. This feels really weird because they're not actually here with me, but they will be on the screen after. Thank you.